Can we go over the homework problem to let us assign for
The homework problem or you,
the 9.3? Right.
9.3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me look at the problem and then we'll go over that. Okay. In this problem, on that problem, if you look at page 284 of your textbook, it just gives you okay, you have the diagram that shows on page 285 of your text. Okay, so this is a node number 1, node number 2, and then number 3 and 4. Okay, so you have that diagram. And then they show you all the other points. So 112, 111, for instance, and 110. Okay, and then 108 and 119 and so on. Okay, so what it tells you, the problem already gave you the minimum travel time paths. So that makes it much easier for you to do. But if they would not give it to you, then you have to find it, which we did that on the example problem in the that I gave you before. All right, so if they would not give you that, then you know how to get the minimum travel time path from node number 1 to all other nodes. So you have to use the algorithm that we did in the problem that we did at the beginning with the network. So find what would be the minimum travel time path from 1 to all other nodes, to node number 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then from 2, the same from 3 and 4. So I did that example problem. You have to pretty much follow that example problem and do that. Now, in this problem, they made it very easy. And they said that the tree number 1 is from 1 to 112, 110, I'm reading it from page 284 of your textbook at the bottom. So for instance, they said tree number 1. So that you go from 1 to 112, and then you go to 110, and then you go to 109, okay, and you go to 113, and then you go to 2. So this is from home node number 1 to home node number 2. So the way they did it, they look at the number of minutes that it takes you, and they wrote that it might take 13 minutes. So they gave you that. So pretty much they tell you that this is the 3 from 1 to 112, and then you go 110, and then you go 109. 109 will be actually here. So then you go here, and then from 109 you go to 113, and then you go to 2. So they gave you this 3. They said from node 1, if you want to go to 2, that's the minimum travel time path. Okay, so they gave it to you. If they would not give you, you have to do this and find it, which we did find them in the first homework problem you did at the network. So you should do that and be able to do that. Everybody understand this? So this is the minimum travel time path from 1 to 2. Okay, now, how do we assign the trips on that? If you look at the table in the top of it, they say from 1 to 2 is 1,000 trips. So you have to assign 1,000 trip. So 1,000, so I would just draw that. So here is, so this is node number 2, this is node number 1. Okay, this is 112, this is 110, and this is 109, and this is 113, correct? So if I have to assign 1,000 trips on it from the table, that's what it says from zone 1 to zone 2. So you just assign 1,000 trip here, 1,000 trip here, 1,000 trip here, and 1,000 trip here, and 1,000 trip here. So this is your assignment. Everybody understand that?
Yeah, I understand it.
Okay. Now,
Yes, sir.
from home node number 1, you want to go to 3. If you want to go to 1, 3, again, they gave it to you. 1, you go to 112. So this is 112. Okay, then it said go to 110. So you come down to 110. And then they say go to 109. So you got to go to 109, which is here. And from 109, you go to 104. So you come down here. Okay. And then you go to 105. And then you get to 3. So this is the minimum travel time path from 1 to go to 3. So if I draw that, so here is from 1, I go to 112, then come down to 110 again, and then go across to 109, come down to 104, and then go to 105, and then go to 3. So that's your 3 from 1 to 3. And from 1 to 3, they say 5,000 trips going. So I have to assign 5,000 trips. So 5,000 will be on this link. 5,000 will be on this link. 5,000 will be on this link. 5,000 will be here. 5,000 here. And 5,000 here. So those are the assigned trips over 1 to 3. And the next one, you have 1 to 4. So you have to do 1 to 4. So if I do 1 to 4, they say you go from 1 to 112 again. So I'm using a yellow. And from 112, they say go 110. So they come down again. And then you go to 103. So you come down here. So 103, you go to 114, you come down here. And then you go to 4. So this is your 3 from 1 to 4. Okay? So if I draw that here, so from 1, I go to 112. Then I come down to 110. And then I come to 103. Then I go to 114. And then I go to 4. So that's my 3 from 1 to 4. And they said 3,000 trips on the table. So I have to add 3 here. And 3 here. 3 here. 3 here. And 3 here. So that shows you the 3, 1 from node number 1 to all other nodes, which is to node number 2, 3, and 4. And this is what my assignment is. Everybody understand that? Now, you have to do the same thing from node number 2 to go to all other nodes. So then you will have another 3 trees, which they have listed for you. Makes it much easier. You didn't have to find it. And then you have to assign the same trips from 2 to 1, 2 to 3, 2 to 4. The same thing here. After you got all 4 trees, which is going to be each of them 3 of them. There are 4, so that will be 12 trees. And at the end, you start adding. For instance, you find out how many go from 1 to 112. In this case, there's 1,000 on the 1 to 112. And then there's a 5,000 and there's a 3,000. Now in other trees, if there are more, then you have to add up all of these and find from 1 to 112, how many trips go. And then the other links too. Just add them up. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. After you add all those, then you go back to the table in the back of the problem and fill out the missing links. Some of them are listed, some of them are not. Then you will fill out those spots that's missing. For instance, the one that's missing from 117 to 111. Okay? No, I'm sorry, from 113. No, it's 117. Let me see, where is 117? 117 is here. This is 117 to 111, which is here. So if this link is being used and you have a volume on it, you got to fill out that page, the missing links. There's a 111 to 110, the next column. So 111 to 110 is this link. You have to figure out among all those 12 trees, how much would be between 110 to 111. So fill it out. So first you have to do these trees. This is from 1, then you have to do for 2, you have to do for 3, and you have to do for 4. After you do that, you start adding all these links. After you add them, then you can go back to the table, start filling out those numbers. So that's the homework problem. So
Professor,
yeah,
why does it from 117 to 111? It
yes.
says 7.
Is it what?
It says 7. What does that mean?
7 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it takes 7 minutes.
So you want to find the trip interchange?
Like for instance, on the ones that we have so far, we did not use 117 to 111.
Okay.
Okay, we might not be even using it in other trees either. If we don't use them, so the volume will be 0.
Okay.
Okay.
So the number is going to be around like these numbers right here, like 3,000, 5,000, 1,000?
Yeah, whatever it is, but the total, for instance, between right now, let's say if we had only these trees, so the total will be 1,000 plus 5,000 plus 3,000 will be 9,000.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but when you develop other trees, which is other 3 of them on each node, so there will be 9 more trees. So maybe you will have more of this 1 to 112.
Oh,
We
you
don't
add
know.
them all.
Yeah, you add them up. That's it.
Okay.
So the all or nothing assignment model was 3 steps. 1, finding the tree. In this problem, they made it easy for you. They found the tree for you. They listed it. But if they didn't, you have to find these trees. You have to find what is the minimum travel time path that you go from 1, for instance, to 2. You have to do that. Once you do that, that's the first step. The second step is what we just did. You assign the trips over the network. This is the second step that we did with all these. Okay? Then the third step is just adding them up together for each link. Okay? Any question?
Professor, so just to clarify, the interchanges, that's the trees, right? Each one, like all those listed, those are all the trees we gotta make.
Yeah, you got to make each of those trees. Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense. Once we make those trees, then we could find the trips in between, and then okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other question?
Professor, from 117 to 111 would be 0, right? Since we're not using that.
Yeah, but the thing is this is what's happening right now. But I'm not sure that it's going to be the same for when we do 2 to 4 or 3. I'm estimating that it is going to be 0, but I don't know. You have to follow the trees. Correct? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, at this time, yes, it is 0. But if you develop other trees and for some reason there will be a volume on there, then you have to add that. It is possible that we don't use them. Okay, any other question? All right, so that was your homework. Any other question? Okay, let me go over the exam shortly. I thought everyone should have got 100 on that, but unfortunately, a lot of you got 100, but a lot of you didn't do anything at all. Okay, you should have done this one. That was very easy quiz. The reason was I did a problem exactly as an example problem in the class. You did a homework problem, which you did it. And this is similar to your homework problem, except instead of from one node, we got production from 2 nodes, which is not a big deal. Anyway, so what we had here is that we had 2 nodes that producing the trips and 3 nodes that attract the trips. So we had a production on node number 1, which was 300. And we had a production at node number 5 that was 700. And then we had an attraction at node number 1, which was 450. And we had an attraction node number 2 was 250. And then attraction node number 4 that was 300. Okay, so those are the attraction. And I gave you all the F's. So F sub 3.1 was 0.36. F sub 3.2 was 0.45. F sub 3.4 was 0.18. And then you had F sub 5.1 was 0.36. F sub 5.2 was 0.18. And F sub 5.4 was 0.25. So these were given. You have to use the gravity model. So the formula was Tij is equal to Pi Aj Fij Kij over that summation. All right. So you can use the formula to do that, or you could just do as a table, exactly like an example problem in the book. You should have looked at it, how to do it, or you did the homework exactly like that. So they say use Kij equal to 1. So if you do the table first, we start from P1 equal to 300 and distribute that trips. So we'll be on zone 1, 1, 2, and 4. So those are the attraction zones. How much attraction you have? We have given you 450. We gave you 250. And we gave you 300. Your Fijs are given. It's 0.36. Okay, 0.45 and 0.18. So the first thing we want to do, the numerator. If Kij equal to 1, all we have to do is just find the Aj, Fij. Exactly like the example problem in the book or the homework you did. So you multiply 450 by 0.36, you get 162. And then you get 112. And you get 54. When you add these together, that's the denominator. That's going to be 328. So then what we need to do is we need to do Aj, Fij divided by the summation. So you divide 162 by 328, you get 0.5. 112 divided by 328, you get 0.34. You divide 162 by 54. I'm sorry, dividing 54 by 328, you get 0.16. So that summation is going to be equal to 1. Now your P is 300. All you have to do is multiply P by the previous columns. So you get the Tij. So 150, 102, and 48. And the total will be 300. So you distribute the 300 trips over these 3 zones. The first zone will attract 150, second zone 102, third zone 48. So this is exactly like the example problem in the book. All you have to do is just look at it, copy it with different numbers. That's it. And you did that homework exactly like this. Okay, so this is for P1 equal to 300. So you do the same thing for P2 equal to 700 with different numbers. If you do that, then you end up with these numbers. So you will have 0.36, it stays the same, 0.18, and 0.25. And the number will be 162, 45, and 75. And the total will be 282. Then you divide each of those by 282, and you get 0.574. You get 0.16, and then you get 2.266. All right, the total is equal to 1. And instead of 300, you will have 700. And the numbers that you multiply, you get 402, you get 112, and you get 186. And the total comes to be 700. So this was your quiz. That was very simple. Using gravity model to find the trip from one zone to other zones. Any question on this problem? Okay, those of you got 0, that means you guys didn't study. So you have to be careful. Okay, you got to study the example problem, homework problem. I gave you all of that, so I just changed the numbers, gave you the different one. You should have all got 100. Anyway, so that was your quiz. Any question regarding the quiz? All right, let's go over the lecture for today. So we talk about traffic impact report, if you remember. And I mentioned that the traffic impact report is required for every every development that's significant, such as hospital, a lot of residential units, office buildings, and so on. I had a list of them last time. It's in your book, you can read it. So those are the steps that we really have to do. One is we have to survey the area. Of development. So we have to do the survey. We have to go and drive around and draw a map, different map about the street, geometric design of it. If there are signals, which there are, we have to find how many second, green, yellow, red, they call a phase of the signals. So we have to see exactly in a map where is the location of your development is, and look at all the surrounding area of the development. If there are intersections, we have to draw a map and show where your development is. And if there are bus line going or metro going, we have to, or bicycle path. All of these has to be listed in a graph, a separate graph for each of them. So we do the survey of the area and we gather all those data. The second thing that we do is meet with city engineer. So we have to meet with him to ask him what he wants us to do. So he probably have a list that said that, well, in order to get the traffic impact report for this land over here that you are building a shopping center, you need to go and analyze these intersections. He give you a list of them and tell us that how these intersections gonna function after you develop the area or the shopping center. Are they going to be congested or not? And what is going to happen with it? So he give you a list of things to do that you have to do. The third thing that we want to do is we look at the existing condition. So by looking at the existing condition, we go gather data on all these intersections, for instance. One typical intersection is this. So all these movements, right turn, through, left turn, on the northbound, if this is the north, this is the northbound, then you have to do the same thing for the southbound. And then you have to do the same thing for eastbound. And the same thing for westbound. So you got to get that data on this, of all of these intersections that you have to analyze. During AM peak and PM peak. So we have to go find when is the AM peak. So usually we do that between 6 to 9 AM, and we do it between 3 to 6 PM. And we find data on 1 hour, which is 4 15 minutes consecutive. 4 15 minutes make it 1 hour. So we take the data every 15 minutes. So if we have 4 consecutive 15 minutes, that's the highest, that's the peak hour. So it could be between morning, could be between 7:30 to 8:30, for instance. So that's the peak hour in AM. PM could be between maybe 5:30 or between 5 to 6. That could be a PM peak. So we take the data on the PM and AM peak. And what we find, we bring him to office and we find level of service. So we find level of service. If you remember, we talk about level of service. We said level of service is simply, we have the level of service what? A, B, C, D, E, and F. You remember that? When we did the 2-lane highway, A is the best. That means it's not that crowded at all. Few cars go through that intersection. B is a little bit more congested. C is more congested. D is congested. And then E is the maximum that can go through the intersection. We call this capacity. And F is the failing. That means we have more cars to go through than the intersection can handle. So cars backing up. Like the intersection we have between Valley Boulevard and Fremont, always cars backing up during the peak hour. That's the F. So we analyze these for existing condition. Existing condition means what? We still have our land over here and we haven't done anything yet. So we want to know what is the current condition. Why we are doing that? Because if we are building the shopping center and we find that on this intersection, we have level of service D, that is possible that originally or at the current condition was a D. So it's nothing to do with our project. Or if the intersection turned out to be F, maybe that intersection was in trouble before, like for instance, Valley Boulevard and Fremont. Level of service is E or F. So if you build a building on Valley Boulevard, although we are contributing some traffic to that intersection, but it's not our fault because already it's E or F. That's why we have to do current condition. So we do current condition or existing condition of all the intersections, take the data, analyze it, find the level of services for each intersection. Okay? Now, the next thing we do, we look at the existing condition plus background project. Okay? Now, if you are building this, let's say if you are building this shopping center, and this shopping center will be open up in 2 years. We want to know 2 years from now, before our shopping center is being open, what would be the traffic on those intersections? Now, sometime between now and 2 years, maybe there are some other development that happened. Maybe another shopping center over here. Maybe there's an office space over here. These open up already and contributing to the traffic. So those are the background projects. Some other project could be built between now and 2 years from now. So what we want to do is before we open our shopping center, we want to know what is the situation at that time before our shopping center opens. So that we know if something goes wrong, maybe it's not our fault because those intersections already are in trouble. So that's why we are doing this. Sometimes there is no other development happen. There is no background project. But what happened is the traffic grows over the years. So 2 years from now, the traffic, if the traffic grows 5% per year, we have to increase the existing condition volume that we have and increase them by 5% per year. So for instance, if you had 1,000 cars going, 5% per year will be times 0.05 to the power of 2, because it's a cumulative. So we have to figure out how much that volume is, because usually the traffic grows if there is the development or there is no development. So whether the traffic grows or some other development happens in the surrounding area, we have to find the volume of the traffic on each of those intersections at that time and find level of service again. So we just find level of service again. So maybe that intersection here was level of service D, but 2 years later, it turns out to be E under this situation. And then the fifth one is existing condition plus background project and plus our project. Now we are adding our project. Now we figure out by trip generation, which we did, how many trips generate our shopping center, how we can distribute the trips, more choice, and then assignment, like the problem we just did, assigning the trips over the network to see how much additional trips we are adding to each of those links and each of those intersections. Now we find again level of service. Now, if that level of service E, which was in the phase 4, turned out into F, then we are in trouble. But the city always accepts anything that's above D. So they don't care anything that's above D, they say it's okay. But if it goes below D, which is E and F, then you have to do something about it. Now, this traffic impact report is mainly for negotiation, because the city say that because you turn that intersection into F, you have to do a mitigation measures, figure out what to do in order to bring it to D or C. And if any cost associated with it, the developer has to pay for it. So it will cost the developer money. Now, what the developer can argue because of these steps would say that, listen, this intersection without my project was a E. That means already it was congested. I just increased it to F, which was a few more trips. So I should not pay for the whole thing because this intersection was already in trouble. So they can argue that maybe they have to pay 20% or 10% or 30% of the cost. So that's why we have to do step 4. We should do step 4, that's saying that without our project, what would be the situation at that time? And then add the project. And then negotiate for the cost of mitigation measures. Does everyone follow me?
Yeah, follow you.
Okay, so that's what we are doing. Now you have to do level of service for each of these intersections and find the what level of service is. Anything that's E and F, you have to do mitigation measures. What is that mitigation measures means? That you have to do something that level of service improves to D or a C. For instance, if you find that there is an intersection that there are too many left turn movements, maybe if we increase the number of lanes from 1 to 2 left turn, maybe that improves the level of service. So that's what we have to do. There are so many tricks that we do in the traffic engineering that improves the level of service. So if there are too many right turn movement, so maybe we have to just make one lane for just the right lane movement, and that might improve the level of service. So we have to do certain things. The last thing we don't want to do is any type of a construction. Because if you do any type of a construction, like widening the road, widening the bridge, those are very costly. And since developer has to pay for it, most of it, they will fire you. They get another consultant that can write a better traffic impact report, that they don't have to have that much of a cost. So you have to come with the soft solutions as much as possible to solve the problem. Any type of a construction costs a lot of money. Maybe marking or remarking or taking a parking away from that section of the intersection, those all improve. Those are okay. They are not costly. You just put a sign, no parking between 6 to 9 a.m. No parking between 4 to 6 p.m. So those are okay. But if you say, okay, we gotta widen this road, forget it. Or if there's a 4-way stop sign and you have to signalize it because of adding too many cars, your project adding too many cars, the signalization on the intersection might cost $250,000 to $400,000. And that's very costly. But sometimes we don't have a choice. We have to do it. That's why sometimes we have even to design a new road and build a new road. That's why in some areas that they develop housing, when you want to buy a house, they said on the escrow that you have to pay $5,000 for transportation improvements. That means because we build those houses, we had to improve the transportation, building a roadway, building it, making the intersection signalized and so on. So they divide those costs among the price of the homes. When they sell it, they charge you that extra money for the transportation improvements. Anyway, so after you do the mitigation measures, then you find the level of service again. Now, maybe your level of service improved from F, went to D. Then you are okay. But you have to have all the level of services between A to D. You cannot have a traffic impact report that your level of service is E and F. After you do all that, you write the report, you present it to the city engineer. He goes over your calculation. Make sure you have not done any type of a fudging the numbers or whatever to get the level of services. So you could be hired by city or a county to go over this traffic impact report. So you have to be careful. You have to study, make sure that all the calculation is correct in order for you to approve it. And if you're a consultant, you have to write the traffic impact report to make the developer happy. And in the meantime, meet the requirement of the city. So after you do all that, then it goes to the planning commission. So when the city engineer approves the report, it goes to the planning commission for that city. And the planning commission has to approve your project in order to get you a permit to build. So they look at your report. So your report will be public. So other neighborhood in that area, all the neighbors, all the people look at that report. And if there is any problem with it, they bring it to to a planning commission and present that, and they tell you that they don't agree with your numbers. And you have to satisfy these people before the planning commission give you a permit to build. To get a permit is not the easy thing to do, especially for large development. A lot of politics involved. Some people just look for that type of a problem, try to gather the neighborhood to go against your project, to make themselves famous for some type of a position or some type of a political position that they want in the future. So they might go against your project and it might not be even valid, but they do that in order to gain some status, right? So some of these projects might take 3 months, 6 months, and you have to go back and forth to planning commission, correct things, talk to the neighborhood, talk to the head of the neighbors, negotiate with them, see what they want and how much you can satisfy them. And sometimes some projects never get the permit to be built. I had an example many years ago that we had a piece of land in Simi Valley, and the guy wanted to build a shopping center. After 2 years, he burned out and he sold the land to somebody else that he goes after it. And that guy did it for a while. They could never get that permit. So it's political, but this is what you have to write. These are the steps you have to take. So if you go to any city, ask for the traffic impact report, you will see exactly these are the steps. But on these steps that we are talking about, for instance, existing condition plus background project, if there is a project here, to know how much this project contribute to the traffic on the network, you have to go through those 4 steps that I talked about for the last 2-3 weeks. Trip generation, you have to know how many trips are being generated, how it's being distributed, what percentage go in these directions. And then you have to do mode choice. How many of them going by buses? How many of them going by auto? And then assign the trips over the network to figure out what percentage of these trips will go over each of these links and each of those intersections and add them up. So you have to do for each project. For instance, I did the traffic impact report for City of Valencia. Long time ago, they were building 3,000 homes. But at the same time, there were 28 development was happening in those areas. So I had to do the analysis for 28 development, adding all that number, all the volume of the traffic they generate, and so on. And then at the end to come up with the traffic impact report. And was an extensive report that I worked on it for almost 6 months. But I hired most of the students from